Hello, this is Ron Hammond. I'm your professor, and I wanted to share a little bit of informational story about how I came to be a professor of sociology at UVU. So, what I want to do first is I want to share with you a story you may have heard about a college student who flunked out the first time he went to college. And I'm not sure if you heard about that one, but that student actually became quite the successful professor at UVU. So you might be wondering, how did that happen? And I want to tell you that that student who failed and flunked out the first try of college was me. And coming back and succeeding and eventually learning how I myself learned and succeeded in college was a major step towards me ever becoming a professor. And so, what I want to do for you is not just introduce myself and tell you what I like and dislike and things like that. I kind of wanted to share this presentation, so I made a PowerPoint and have four different areas I'm going to go through kind of quickly. And if you like something and want to watch it, that part again, you can go back to these little banners to locate the section you want to see the second time. But in this presentation, I'm going to cover how and why I failed the first try. I think it's important to learn from our mistakes. How and why I succeeded in my second try. And then how I had this wonderful epiphany about my career path that led me to want to become a teaching professor. And there were two students that I really didn't know that well in Ohio who had kind of helped me get to that point of an epiphany. And then there's some lessons, some takeaways here. So the fourth approach will be how my experiences can help you in your own education. So let's get started with how in the world I failed my first try. This is my high school logo, and that's my high school senior picture. You remember those? You borrow the same tux or dress or whatever the photographer has, and everybody looks so classy, and they just um, sit and think with that naive, innocent senior smile that life is perfect until they graduate and they realize, oh my gosh, you got to do something with your life. I forgot about that part. And I was a little bit in trouble. This isn't my actual transcript, but I thought I'd save you the hassle of looking at all the nuances. This is my summary of 8 F's, 12 D's, 22 C's, and all my A's were in physical education. So you might say, well, how did I graduate high school with that low grades? And I thought it'd be funny to put a Harry Potter wand right there and claim it was magic, but unfortunately it was really not. Back in the 80s, when there was a lot of pressure on school districts not to hold students back or flunk them, um, magical type things that really weren't fair to me or to others happened, where bad grades were changed so that I could stay on varsity squads. Then, not knowing that, not knowing I'd been set up for failure, I enrolled in West Georgia University in 1981. When I enrolled, they were called West Georgia College, and they became a university while I was there, flunking out. I took 2 quarters. The first quarter, I passed one class. The second quarter, I passed, maybe I think I passed one. But it was so low, they sent my parents a letter back then. That's how they did it before FERPA came out to protect students. And they basically said something that felt to me like, get this man a shovel and let him do what he's good at because he sucks as a student. That isn't at all what was in the letter, but it was really a confidence blow. It fractured my hopes of maybe becoming a professional or at least graduating with a bachelor's degree. So what I want to do now is kind of show you after that what happened in my life that led me to want to try a second time to go back to school and eventually earn these degrees and have this path that I climbed up to become a professor. And to understand that, part of my life experience was to volunteer for a while for my church. I was in France and Switzerland, and friends of mine there have said, you'll be a better student because of all the chocolate you've eaten here. And I thought that there's probably no scientific support for that, but I do enjoy their culture, language, chocolate, beautiful geography. As you can see behind us, we're on an Olympic ski jump in Grenoble, France, and just walked up there to the top. The door was open, so I came back from there and knew I loved to learn, and my dad was really concerned about my sense of self-worth. And he said, look, I talked to my bosses over at the General Motors car plant, and they have you a job, and they'll help you eventually get a bachelor's degree in business if you want to major in that, and then you don't have to worry about it. And so with all that money, because back in 1984 it was about $50,000, just under $50,000 with great medical benefits. But I would have been, I think, putting a tire on a car nonstop all day, every day on an assembly line. And I just thought, what about my love to learn? I wanted to just go and have a chance to be educated and to have the experience of being a college student. So I said no to that wonderful job offer and thanked my dad and went out to cross country to Rexburg, Idaho. People joked about me going there and said they call it iceberg, and you'll find out when you get there why it's so cold. And it's cold. But here are some things I was thinking about. What did you do at Rick's College that made it so you had a better chance to succeed? I took a study skills class, as simple as that. I kind of owned up to the fact that in college they don't give you grades just because you're in a sports team, and they don't give you grades just because you paid tuition and showed up. So I thought, well, I'll see what I can do better. And I learned tons of stuff about what college students did that really led to their success. And what really mattered is that I started learning from that course some things I could do that I still do now as a professor when I'm doing different administrative tasks and retraining and learning new things like teaching, making videos for online courses. So I think that would be a great takeaway later, and we'll come back and talk about that a little bit. I graduated with an associate's degree in health science. My focus there was emergency medicine, and I had certified as an EMT and rode the ambulance a little while. Then a friend of mine told me about Idaho State University. Short version is 2 years later, I got a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration, focusing on nursing home administration. And we love Pocatello, great place, and not quite as cold, but still up in the mountains there. And from there, I heard about a program at Brigham Young University in Provo and earned a master's degree in health education in just another academic year in 1989. And while I was in that program, a friend said, hey, Ron, I think you'd really enjoy a doctoral program they have across campus, and you'd still get to use some of your health science degrees in education and study the family. And so with that, I kind of went out of my way and talked to the guy in charge, and he offered me an assistantship, which is like a graduate school PhD scholarship, and it was $22,000 a year. And in about 2.5 years, I earned my PhD in family studies sociology. That's my dad, our first child, Daniel, and my brother, Drew, who were there for my graduation. Wanted to point something out to you. When you get your doctorate, they put these 3 stripes on you. And then they do a thing called a hooding. It's the only ones at graduation who have this experience. And I found an old VHS. You can ask your grandparents what that was. And this is actually part of that hour-long graduation where the doctoral students get hooded.
Ronald Joel Hammond.
That young guy there looks just like me because it is me. And you come up, they give you a degree that's an empty folder, and then you move on, and you're in a great big arena there. So that hooding of a doctorate gives me permission, opens a lot of doors. and I put out over 100 applications to become a Division Research 1 university research professor. And it was a tough year. 1991 was a tough year. So I did land. This is in Cleveland, Ohio. I landed a postdoctoral fellowship. And when I got there, I'd been so busy packing and moving, it never occurred to me that I was going to an Ivy League university. That's me way in the back with our son Ben, and there's my wife, and there's Crystal, and there's Dan, our adult children now. But they went out there with us for this adventure, and we had amazing opportunities to research and to train and to write grants and to make really a lot of good friends and establish a pattern of being a professor. But it was the wrong kind of professor. I didn't know it yet. So I wanted to show you this section of the epiphany I had. A few months ago, I went out in the morning. A beautiful sunrise was coming up to the east, and this is a nice metaphor, I think, for an epiphany. It's the light comes on, the breakthrough, and you realize something. And I went to Cambridge Online, just for some of you who are hearing the word epiphany for the first time. An epiphany is a moment when you suddenly feel that you understand or suddenly become conscious of something that is very important to you. And somehow somebody took a picture of the really old building that my office was located in. And I found this picture online. I don't even know who to give it credit to, but that's my office window right there. And I shared it with another postdoctoral fellow. And one day we had two students. One was enrolled in my social problems class, and the other was her roommate. And they came in and they said, "Can we talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And my student said, "This is my friend so and so. She's my roommate, and she's in a quandary and needs to talk to someone." And the way she said it made me think that student wanted therapy, and I was clear with her. I'm not a therapist. I did the other side of that, family studies. I'm a research analyst. And she said, really what we need is just a big brother to listen and give us some advice. And I won't tell you what her quandary was, but basically she had gotten into the party scene there at the university, and it crashed her. She had a full ride scholarship, and it crashed her GPA, and somehow she got pregnant, and she came in and didn't know what to do. And all we did was talk, and that talk lasted for well over 3 hours. And when she left, I was like, man, I really enjoyed that. I love to learn, I love to teach, but being with this student and her roommate led me to realize I like being a part of students' lives. And I wanted to focus more on being a part of a learning experience for students rather than just part of a scientific study using statistics and writing grants. That's what I was doing at the time. And so that was my epiphany. I love to teach. So my wife and I made the decision. We pulled, by then, I'm not exaggerating, I had over 200 applications out at all over. And I started withdrawing the ones for the research positions and started applying to community colleges, Salt Lake Community College, Ricks College, other colleges in Arkansas and Florida. And there was this one called UVCC in Orem. I hadn't been there, but I flew myself out and stayed in with my brother, my younger brother that you saw in the picture. I stayed in his single apartment with 5 other guys on a holiday, and I had a great interview. And out of 48 candidates, I was selected, and my wife. When I flew back home and they were making the decision at UVCC who to hire, the phone rang and they asked for me, and my wife snapped this picture of me. It's actually a printed picture, back when that's how you developed your own film. And that's me accepting my job at UVCC back in 1992. It would take about a year for it to become UVSC, and then just a little bit longer than that to become UVU. And the whole time I've been there, and I've been growing this university and growing programs and teaching and being a part of my students' very personal educational experiences. And I found this, don't laugh at it. I know you want to, but back in the 1990s, I had at my disposal, I had a VHS camera that made a lot of weird background noises every time the autofocus moved around. And as I've been going through some of the old technology, trying to bring it up and digitize it and turn a lot of it into MP4s, I found this. This kind of tells you that my epiphany led me to the right field. This is me in 1993.
What I really love about work is that I'm a teacher, and I have a lot of students. And it's nice to have an influence at the
Well, I just muted it.
school, or they're just before. And it's nice to have an influence at this stage of their life when they're just out of high school, or they're just before the rest of their career and their adult lives. And so, my favorite part of teaching is the student-teacher relationship. And we do teach, and people learn a lot of stuff. But I come home sometimes from work, and I'm just thrilled about what I do for a living and the meaningfulness of it. And I see people's lives and the effect that I have on them, and I think that's very rewarding kind of an experience.
That was no bulls, no edited, other than I think my daughter danced in front of the camera completely, and I thought that might be distracted, so I took that scene out and just jumped back to me talking. But that was some of our other children in the background playing in the room. I wanted to be a teacher, and I do not regret it all. My pay's been lower. My I guess you would call it the prestige that you would have being a Research One university professor carries a lot more clout. That didn't matter near as much as being a part of thousands of students' lives, traveling around the country with them, presenting papers that we had developed and done the research for, and watching some of them, including our own children and my own wife, who graduated UVSC back in sociology back in the day. And this is a field I've enjoyed. I'm coming to the end of it. And so I thought maybe it would be helpful if I helped you to see some wisdom that you can draw from all these stories about how I became a professor. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that tree at the end. That's in Provo at the courthouse in Center Street in Provo. But let's see if we can find you some takeaways, some one-liners about watching this long thing is turning into a little bit longer than I wanted. Sorry I messed up the audio, but that's the way it runs here on my computer with me sometimes. Here's the first takeaway. Don't let the past experience you've had rule your present. If you're like me and you failed in high school, had to get a GED, or failed in your earlier attempts at college, you might find some more success this time. Just keep batting, swinging at it. It's okay to miss. It's okay to mess up, and it's okay not to have a straight A, grade point average. Like every student around you, you have to learn for yourself how you learn best. And another takeaway, I think, is that it's a myth that there are good students and bad students. There are people who know already what their strengths are in their academic undertakings, in their degree pursuit, in their education, and they've got an advantage for whatever reason. They learn more about themselves. But there's not a good student, there's not a bad student, but you do want to develop your own strengths and interest and go in that direction, and be careful of the stereotypes and other challenges that you're going to face. And one of them is that good students don't ever have to take courses about reading or college success or study skills or anything. It's okay to do that, because it's a way of giving yourself a jump start, especially on a second try. Or even some of you might be like me. I didn't have anyone showing me how to become a good college student, and so I thought immediately I was a bad one, and so did my parents, by the way, at first. And so after I took that course, I realized I have the potential to develop some good skills. I'm not a bad student. And first generation students like me, we have a challenge because we don't have a role model. Someone's kind of saying, this is how I did it, and here's what you might do. Be careful of this entangled knot. And all these pictures came from Pixabay.com. They're open access pictures I can use for free. It would be a miserable mess trying to untangle all this. And sometimes students, they kind of stall because here's a myth. They say, I can't figure out what I want to do for the next 50 years of my life. And until I do, I can't choose a major. That's not true. The majority of students, well over 9 out of 10 of them who graduate with a bachelor's degree, they don't work in a specific field that degree is designed for. Nurses and dental hygienists and engineers and some other majors like that, they clearly work in their field. But the majority of people, you just have to have a bachelor's degree to get that job. So the takeaway is earn a degree. And earning that degree matters way more than choosing the perfect major. If you get the degree, the doors open and the pay increases, and then you can change the world a little bit. Finally, the last takeaway is look for evidence of what you really enjoy, and perhaps your own epiphany will happen. And it'll happen to you, for you, at the right time in the right place. That would be an awesome thing. And I wanted really quickly, as I show you this, tell you that part of the general education program that requires you to take GE courses in different fields is designed to help you learn what you love to learn and what you're good at. Years ago, when our children were young, we didn't have enough time or resources to go out of town for Thanksgiving, so we stayed in Provo. And while we were in Provo, we rented a hotel and went to see a movie, and stayed in a hotel with a big indoor heated swimming pool. And our children just loved to swim, and they watched Cartoon Network and ate junk food that I bought for them and ate with them back then. And on the way home, we said, what was your favorite part of the whole vacation? And all of them loved this tree that's at the courthouse in Center Street in Provo. It's a rare hybrid tree that was created out of Utah State and given as a gift to the curator of the grounds here back in 1929. It's called an American weeping elm, and it really is only one of a kind. It's got to be just one of a kind. If there's another one, I couldn't find anything about it on the internet. But that tree has been there the whole time, and our children have wanted to go back to it. And I think sometimes your epiphany's around you all the time. You just don't know how great it is, and you haven't had the light shine on it yet. You haven't had the experience of seeing it the way you need to see it to know yourself and what you like and what you want to do. And if you're lucky, what you love. So pick a major that you could enjoy. Work really well to graduate sooner and watch doors open for you. That's my story about how I once flunked out of West Georgia College, ended up in an Ivy League university, holding my own and doing fairly well, and then had an epiphany and came to what is now called Utah Valley University, where I have really enjoyed almost 30 years of being a professor here. Glad you're in my class. Thanks.